Today we're going to talk about successes and failures here on our half-acre homestead. I'm Jackie. This is the Little Half Acre. Years ago we moved here to Bakersville, North Carolina. We bought just under a half acre of rock and clay on a steep incline, and I decided I would turn that into a successful homestead. I thought I would share today with you what I've done in the last 8 years, what's worked and what hasn't. There have been some great successes, and there have been some epic failures too. So I'll share all that with you. We'll start here. This is not gardening, but this is still a tremendous success in my opinion because this is where we wanted to head from day one. I completed an advanced gardening course here in North Carolina. I wanted to be able to teach and to share and to show people how you can have abundance on a small plot of very difficult terrain, working with conditions that most gardeners would not want to fool with. It's taken a while. Moving to agritourism has been, in my opinion, a success. Wanted to do this 5 years ago, but it's taken longer than we thought. Things always do. And now we're open for tours. We do workshops. We're starting with farm to table. We are open every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday now for tours. You can stop by, pick up a brochure and a fan to swat the gnats away because they just are great here, and walk around with a brochure to kind of see what we've done. You can also go online to thelittlehalfacre.com and you can book a tour with me where I will spend 45 minutes with you explaining in detail what I do, how I do it, and what works in this area. Now we'll move a little bit backward there and we are going to look at don't know if it's a success or failure yet, but I'll know next year. If you can see this, there's a mess in front of me. This, like everything else on this property, was nothing but grass. And last fall I covered this with cardboard and lots of duck manure and straw. I keep adding to it. I cover it with the row cover of the landscape cloth, weight it down with the logs and whatever to keep the chickens out of it. And I am building a bed here so that next year I can do flowers. I'll bring them over from the other side of the property and we'll have a herbaceous border that runs the entire front of the property. Yesterday I took the cover off to add a little bit more and I let the chickens get in there and scratch around in it when they were free ranging. Today I will cover it back up and next spring it'll be ready to plant. This area I'm going to consider a success and a failure at the same time. Again, when we moved here 8 years ago, there were 23 trees that we cut down, and there was nothing but green grass. No landscaping, no vegetables, no fruits, no trees other than trees you didn't want. One of the things I did 3 years ago, thanks to my brother and sister-in-law, was I started a herbaceous border here in the front to try to add some charm to the property. I was gifted with daylilies and hostas and Siberian iris. I actually bought some black-eyed Susan and some white ruffled daisy. And we put this bed in, which it's a little bit past its prime right now. It looks gorgeous from mid-May to, say, the end of June. We're in the middle of July and it's starting to look overblown. So in a way it's a success, but in a way it's a failure because I needed to divide all these plants last year. Every 2 years they are just in great abundance. That's what the plan is for the garden bed that I just showed you that's in progress. This fall I will divide, or next spring probably, I will divide these and move them over there so that this look continues all the way across the front of the property. Here's another area that I will say is a success, mostly. This is a Methley plum tree, which is going to be a bit of a challenge growing in this area. We are at 3,000 feet. We do have some difficult winters, some cold temps. Last year was killer. We had a once-in-a-generation deep freeze of 8 degrees below, which is not normal. And that is an apple tree that I bought 8 years ago. That is a Grimes Golden, which is an heirloom variety. Now, as far as the success and the failures, the apple tree is a success because we've gotten lots and lots of good apples off of it. That is actually a standard size tree. but it will never get bigger than it is now because of the way I prune. Thanks to the gardening course that I took, I learned a whole lot about pruning fruit trees. And here's the failure part. I didn't prune anything this year. I didn't have time. Ran out of time, so that one did not get pruned like it should, but it will never, ever get taller than it is. A lot of the upright branches will come down next spring when I prune. This is eventually going to be another apple guild, which is a permaculture way of growing things. Right now it's just the 2 fruit trees, but I will have understory plants like blueberry bushes growing under, and then a herbaceous layer, which might actually be some spring vegetables, fall crops as well, spinach, kale, that sort of thing. And then it will also have vining layers, which will serve as ground covers. For me, that's usually strawberries, although I also do nasturtiums. And if this area got enough sun, I would do sweet potatoes. But this area of the property only gets about 5 to 6 hours of sun a day, which is difficult to grow in. We're having success, though. We do get a little bit of sooty blotch, or sooty mold, and fly speck on the apples because I do not use any sprays on anything ever. So in that way it's a success, and I'm happy with that. This area, this is another apple guild. The apple that you see in the background, if you can see it beyond the bird feeder, is a Stamen winesap, another heirloom variety, and it has its first apple this year. I almost killed it for the first 2 years of its life because I kept it in a pot and forgot to water it, forgot to feed it, forgot to do anything. This area is another permaculture area, and I'm going to consider it pretty much a failure because I did not do what I needed to do this year, which was weed it really well, mulch it really well. There's the problem. I never seem to have enough material to mulch with it. Because we pretty much weed eat most of the property now rather than mowing, I don't have grass clippings to use as a mulch. You have to pardon me while I swat at the gnats who always want to get in your eyes when you live here at 3,000 feet in a subtropical or semi-tropical climate. Anyway, this looked really good last year. I just couldn't do what I needed to do this year. My project for the next couple of days is to re-weed. I did buy some compost. I'm going to lay a couple of inches of compost down. I'm going to chop and drop my comfrey so that helps feed the soil. Then if I have to, I'm going to break down and buy mulch so that I can cover this, and then next spring it'll be ready to grow in again. There were a lot of things growing here this year. Besides the apple tree, we have a couple of blueberry bushes that serve as the understory. The apple tree in permaculture is the overstory. We grew broccoli and cauliflower. Then our vining plants were nasturtium, which did not do well here. The chickens get to free range several hours a day, and this is one of their favorite spots, so they tend to tear up a lot. I have a lot of perennials in this bed. This is one, if you want something that will grow forever and naturalize, grow red vein sorrel. It is an edible. It is a bitter green, so I don't eat a lot of it, but when I make my gourmet salad blends, I do put a little bit of that in for that lemony bite. Plus it's beautiful. We have some beets growing. We have some kale growing that the chickens apparently do not like the red kale. I'm okay with that. I'm sorry, I said kale. This is a Japanese Mizuna. It's a frilly mustard. But the chickens do not like the red kale, so they haven't bothered that yet. Knock on wood, we'll get to eat some of that. I also let a lot of things reseed naturally. I tried growing some bush beans this year, no luck. They did well, or doing well, up in the main growing area, but here not so good, and I'm sure that's because this soil has not been replenished as it should have been. So if I get a few, that's okay. It's better than nothing. This is another perennial, Anise hyssop. It's a medicinal, an insectary, of course, and if you love the smell of licorice, you'll love the smell of this. And then last but not least, up in the area that is totally weeded, other than some strawberries, this is Jerusalem artichokes. I thought I got them all out last year. Obviously I didn't. So when I cut these down this fall, there's no telling how many tubers I will have under there. That's crazy. All you need to do is put one small tuber in and you get a ton. Okay, let's move on. Hi, girls. Hey, Maggie. Hey, little girl. How are you? How you doing, girls? Hi, Mommy. the other two? Are they laying eggs? All right, Sonny. I'm counting this as a success because I wanted chickens from day one. We actually got them last year. It took a while. We bought the coop. We had the run built. Please do not look at the weird angles because that was a mistake. We should have built it ourselves, but whatever. It's built. I have 5 hens. I have one Easter egger, the red chicken that lays green eggs. I have 3 black stars that are good layers, and I have 1 mutt. I was told she was a blue sapphire. She's not because she does not lay colored eggs. She lays brown eggs, but she's sweet. She's in the coop right now doing her thing, and we get 4 to 5 eggs every day. They get to free range for several hours every day, which is why some of the garden beds are torn to pieces, because it's impossible to keep them out of every growing area, and they really can tear up some stuff. I'm going to call this area a success. I have 4 raised beds here. They've done very well. This spring, when I planted the spring crops, which were radishes, spring onions, carrots, which have since been harvested, I did use most of my worm castings up. I finished them up here. I do have a worm farm, and the castings help everything grow. I have replanted, as you can see, with cucumber and squash, zucchini. There's a nasturtium you can't see. Haven't replanted that bed yet except for some beets on this end. This bed, or these beds, have done very well. I've been very happy with how they've turned out. Worm castings are just pure gold. In the beds back here, here's another crop that naturalizes. If you want pineapple ground cherries, if you have 1 plant, in 2 years you'll have 20 plants. They are tremendous reseeders. I don't deliberately plant them anywhere, but wherever there is one that looks like it's going to be well established, I keep it and let it grow there. So the beets that I planted in here, I sacrificed when this thing started to really go. I also do some tomatoes in pots because I don't have enough ground. I do not have enough growing space. I cannot make enough compost to have garden beds everywhere. So most of the tomatoes do okay in pots. I do fight blight in this area. Everyone does. It's very difficult because it's very wet here. So early blight I can normally control because that's a soil-borne virus, and if I mulch around the tomato plants and the chickens leave that alone and I keep them pruned up, then I can escape that. Late blight, however, is airborne, and in this area, because we have so much moisture and so little air with all the trees around, I'm going to get late blight every year, but I usually get enough tomatoes to make us happy. I don't tend to preserve tomatoes. We like them fresh eating rather than canning or freezing, so this works fine for us.